Hello and a warm welcome to this edition of World Today. This is your show where we get you 60 minutes of action from all the developments that are taking place in the world. This is DD India's window to the world. I'm Anil Thomas, and on the show tonight we've got Prime Minister's visit to Italy to attend the G20 summit, as well as a surge in COVID-19 cases across the world. Much more to look to from the world of sports, where the T20 World Cup is on and some interesting contests there on the cards. Let's begin with the top stories. Prime Minister Narendra Modi gets a rousing welcome in Rome while interacting with Indian community, pays floral tributes at the bust of Mahatma Gandhi. Prime Minister in Rome to attend the 16th G20 summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds meeting with President of the European Council Charles Michel and Presidents of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen. Prime Minister Modi to also attend the World Leaders Summit of COP26 in Glasgow. COP26 will explore the possibilities for further accelerating clean growth. India to push for timely implementation of the Paris Agreement, guidelines to limit the global temperature rise. Threat of pandemic still persists at global level. Russia battles record COVID deaths and infections. Partial lockdown put in place in Moscow. South Korea says to implement its first vaccine passport for high-risk venues such as gyms, saunas and bars. WHO appeals to leaders of 20 countries to fund a $23.4 billion plan in its fight against COVID-19 in poorer countries. And in sports, Inter Milan striker Lautaro Martinez signs new contract at Italian Giants until 2026. Martinez, age 24, was approaching the final 18 months of his contract. Well, let's begin with Prime Minister's visit to Italy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is visiting Rome to take part in the 16th G20 summit, paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi in Rome. Prime Minister paid floral tributes at the bust of Mahatma Gandhi at Pisa, Gandhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also interacted with members of Indian community in Rome near the Gandhi statue there in Rome. People were excited to catch a glimpse of Prime Minister in Rome.
नमस्ते मोदी जी. हाँ सर, माझं माई गुरुजी म्हणून मला इथे ओळखतात 22 वर्षापासून आयुर्वेदिकला परमिशन सर. मोदी जी राम राम. जय सियाराम. नमस्ते नमस्ते. लाशा 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 वास्ता वास्ता. बेटा क्या नाम है बेटा आपका? ना
Namaste Modi ji.
भाई मोदी जी थैंक यू वेरी मच
Thank you very much.
आपने
Thank you so much.
क्या किया हाथ को
Thank you very much.
एनी टाइम विल यू गिव योर
Sir,
सर एक फोटो काढायचा आहे सर एक फोटो काढायचा
हाँ
आहे
हाँ
सर.
जरूर जरूर
एक फोटो सर कृपया
फोटो
President, thank you
हैव
so
यू
much.
विजिटेड इंडिया और नॉट
Yes.
3 times.
विच प्लेस
Nagpur, Aurangabad, Delhi. We've been to Kumbh Mela, sir.
सर कुंभमेळ्यामध्ये सगळ्यात चांगलं झालं आमच्यासाठी
Want
खूप
to
छान.
see them.
अरे मराठी बोलतोस काय
हा मी मराठी बोलतो हळूहळू सर थँक्यू सो मच सर.
Jai Modi ji.
Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's official engagements in Rome began with an interaction with the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a tweet said that the official engagements in Rome begin with a productive interaction with the European Council President Charles Michel and the European Council and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The leaders discussed ways to enhance people, economic as well as people-to-people linkages aimed at creating a better planet. Ahead of Prime Minister Modi's engagements in Rome, Indian Ambassador to Italy, Dr. Nina Malhotra, talked about key areas of bilateral cooperation between the two countries, including yoga, culture and energy cooperation. Talking exclusively to DD India, Dr. Nina said Prime Minister's visit will further improve or provide impetus to India-Italy ties in areas of culture, politics and energy.
Despite pandemic, there has been an increase in the Italian investments in India. At the level of parliamentarians also, there has been a lot of interaction. Italy has set up what they call India-Italy Parliamentary Friendship Group. On the cultural front, we are celebrating the festival of India in Italy and Italy in India simultaneously. This year we had the first International Yoga Day celebration in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building in Italy. On the multilateral front, Italy has joined International Solar Alliance, India's initiative, and energy, I would say, is one of the most crucial area of our cooperation, and this is an area where I see a further scope for enhancement of our relationship. So I feel PM Modi's visit provides a tremendous opportunity to take forward the momentum that has gathered in the last few years, both bilaterally and in the context of our shared global responsibilities.
Well, for more on this story, we've got Neeraj Srivastava, former senior diplomat, joining us this evening. Also, we've got a correspondent there joining us from Rome, Amritpal Singh, joining us this evening on World Today. Welcome to both of you. Let me come first to Mr. Srivastava. Looking at the way things stand, in today's perspective, energy going to be one of the focus areas when the Prime Minister meets the Italian Prime Minister Draghi there. How would you look at the broader contours of not only the bilateral but also the G20 summit?
The G20 summit hosted by Italy, has adopted the theme People, Planet and Prosperity. That is the theme. Uh, I will translate it into more comprehensible language that, the COVID pandemic and its impact on people and economies, that is one thing. Planet means climate change. This is the second main theme. And prosperity means how do we recover from the economic setback caused by the COVID pandemic. Now, under this broad theme, many important issues will be discussed. There is a proposal for setting up a fund, a permanent fund, for prevention of pandemics in the future. There is the question of vaccine availability to many countries, which have not really received vaccines from anywhere. They have received vaccines, but the number is very small in relation to their population. Then there is the question of Afghanistan, which will be one of the important topics which will be discussed during this G20 meeting. From India's point of view, there will be cross-border terrorism, terror financing. These will be on the table. And they concern not just India, but they concern many other countries also, because terrorism is a global problem. Yes.
Yes, go on, please. Complete.
Yeah. So this is the broad. I gave you the broad contours of this G20 meeting. What they have done is that they have set up 3 working groups. Means there are 3 sessions in which these things will be discussed. The first is global economy and global health, under which I have already, as I said, vaccines, global economy, how to recover from the economic setbacks caused by the COVID pandemic. Then the second working group will be on climate change and environment. This is a very major problem. We are already witnessing the results of climate change in the form of floods, in the form of droughts, in the form of many other weather phenomena. So this meeting will set the stage for the COP26 in Glasgow, which begins on the 1st of November. So this climate change will be the second main thing, and how far has the Paris Treaty been implemented? That's the other thing. Finally, the third main working group is on sustainable development, and by this I mean that this COVID pandemic, it has set back the economy of the whole world, in fact, and also of individual countries, including India, and caused a great deal of hardship to people. Now, this particular group will discuss how we can, promote economic recovery after the economic havoc caused by the pandemic. So these are the broad issues and the contours of the G20 meeting that's going on.
Mr. Srivastava,
That will start tomorrow actually. Today is the bilateral segment of it.
Mr. Srivastava, do you get the feeling that Prime Minister Modi is going to cite especially India's excellent track record on climate change, as the big ticket, when he has a bilateral with the Italian Prime Minister and also during the G20?
Yes, of course. You see, not only India also is India and particularly Prime Minister Modi was involved in setting up the International Solar Alliance.
True, the ISA.
Which is one of the major ways of getting clean energy. As far as the Paris Accord is concerned, India is on track to actually not only meet but exceed its Paris Accord goals. So India is on a strong wicket as far as climate change is concerned, and I think this will be conveyed not only to the Italian Prime Minister, whom our Prime Minister will be meeting today, but during the G20 meeting tomorrow and day after, I think this India has this to show that we have exceeded our targets, whereas the same thing cannot be said for many countries.
Well, we also got our correspondent there joining us from Rome this evening, Amritpal Singh. Amrit, purely from a discussion perspective, with the bilaterals that happen, alongside the G20, how would what are expected, what are the broader things that are expected from the bilaterals and also from the G20 summit, from an Indian perspective?
Well, okay. Well, if we talk about the bilaterals, let's talk about the bilaterals that took place today and are also taking place today. Today is day one of the Prime Minister's visit to Italy. He came a day before the actual G20 summit which starts tomorrow. He met with the presidents of the European Council and the European Commission. Essentially, trade and investment, trade barriers, cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, collaboration on COVID pandemic and recovery from the pandemic, vaccines. All this was discussed between the two sides. Though the Ministry of External Affairs is yet to put out a detailed statement on what actually transpired in terms of nitty-gritties in this meeting, but the very fact that the two presidents of the Commission and the Council, the European Commission and the Council, met with the Prime Minister, and that was their first bilateral of Prime Minister Modi, shows the engagement India and Europe wish to have to take it further. There are other bilaterals scheduled, as you rightly said, that in the evening there is a bilateral with the Italian Prime Minister. This will be the first in-person meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Draghi. Essentially, the bilateral component of the relationship which the ambassador spoke about, energy cooperation, cooperation in technology, taking the trade further, is what would be discussed. But apart from that, because Italy is also holding the presidency of the summit, and it's chosen the theme People, Planet, Prosperity, which primarily talks about planet, climate change, sustainable development, people, recovery from a health perspective given the pandemic, and prosperity, the economic recovery from the distress that the pandemic has caused. That would also figure on in the meeting between the two prime ministers. And Prime Minister Modi would like to put forth his view on how he sees the way forward from the economic distress, from recovery from a health perspective for people, and opening up borders, mutual recognition of vaccines, so that more and more people could travel, tourists, students, traders, businessmen, so that economy gets a boost. So that's what's expected. Tomorrow on the sidelines of the G20, he has bilaterals with his counterparts from Singapore, Korea. So these are the bilaterals that we know of are expected between Prime Minister Modi and his counterparts from the G20 countries. Now, when it comes to G20, as Ambassador Srivastava was saying, essentially the component of economic recovery, cooperation, building interlinkages of dealing with the pandemic and climate change. Those are going to be the main issues. Climate change from an Indian perspective, India is likely to put forth his credentials on ISA, the ambitious targets it set itself for renewable energy, and make a pitch for putting in place architecture which is more interconnected, where technology transfer from the developed countries to the developing countries and the least developed countries takes place. Climate financing could figure prominently in the Prime Minister's intervention, and also, you know, in terms of COVID vaccination, India's experience sharing, given that it's vaccinated about 1 billion people in such a short span of time. Also, as you know, during Op Maitri, India was producing vaccines, distributing it to the world before the second wave hit. Then, of course, that was stepped down because India required vaccines for its own people. But basically, the Prime Minister would be stating that India is ready to take up its global responsibility of producing and supplying vaccines, especially to the parts of the world who don't have it, and the developed countries need to do their bit, because whatever vaccines they are giving are very less. They are more interested in giving booster doses to their own populations or keeping stocks for their own population, rather than sharing that with the world, especially the very poor countries who are in dire need of the vaccines and help.
Ambassador Srivastava, taking that point forward that Amrut just raised, you know, the WHO has given a clarion call, especially when it comes to helping the poorer countries, finding vaccines, finding way to test. It's asked for a huge fund there from the G20 as well as the COP26 countries. Do you somewhere feel the Prime Minister is going to pitch India, especially with India's policy of vaccine Maitri, you know, especially helping the world, especially helping the poorer countries tide over this particular crisis? You know, is Prime Minister Modi going to make a pitch there?
Well, you know, the whole world already knows. I doubt it very much if the Prime Minister has to make a pitch, so to speak. The whole world knows two things. One is, India is the biggest producer of vaccines in the whole world. This is a fact number one. Number two, that before the second wave hit India, India had already exported vaccines, in many cases without any cost, to almost 86 countries, more than 86 countries. So India is a major player, is part of the solution to this problem of COVID. There is some countries or some country which is part of the problem of the COVID, but India is part of solution to COVID. The vaccine production and the vaccine distribution speaks for itself. India has already now resumed again export of vaccines to several countries, including many countries in Africa. And I think the WHO actually can, help the process by approving India's co-vaccine, for example. It has been taking inordinately long time for this approval, and the least that the WHO can do is to speed up things. Especially in case with a country like India, which has not only AstraZeneca, which is COVID shield, but India has produced its own vaccine, which is shown to be very, very effective, co-vaccine. But WHO for some, has not approved it till now, and we are all waiting, so they should help the process.
Well, November 3rd is when WHO will next meet, and they've asked for more clarifications, especially from Bharat Biotech, before arriving at a decision with regards to that particular vaccine that you just mentioned. But Ambassador Srivastava, looking at Indian economy at large, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, roughly contributing over 3% to the world GDP. Having said that, do you somewhere feel India is well positioned this time around, not only to take center stage in G20, also when it comes to, purely helping move forward the decision making process at the G20?
Yeah, in purchasing power parity terms, India is the third largest economy in the world, after the United States and China. That is an important fact to bear in mind. The second thing to note is that, unfortunately, these two waves of COVID-19, they hurt the Indian economy to a very considerable degree. But the good news is that the economy is recovering at a very fast clip. I mean, somewhere around 9%. So yes, in one sense, in the Indian economy is recovering. If and I have no doubt it will continue to show this rate of progress for some time. It is like an engine which pulls other economies also out of trouble. So yes, the short answer to your question is that yes, India is positioned to to play a role in this in lifting the global economy out of trouble. Because COVID has not only hit India, it has hit every economy in the world.
True.
Except China, which recovered more quickly because for certain reasons. But all economies, United States, the European countries, India, Southeast Asia, everybody has suffered. Russian, I mean, and the wave is still brutal in some parts of the world, like for example Russia. Also, Britain is witnessing a surge in COVID cases. A new variant Delta Plus is supposed to have come on the horizon. So, the story is unfortunately not over yet. The COVID story is still going on, and all one can do. I mean, India definitely we have our experts who know a great deal about these things. What we can do is that we can make sure that the world, that India, for example, and other countries don't slide back, into economic problems. We need to do everything possible to prevent a third wave from coming in India. I am very hopeful that India will be able to do that, but nobody can guarantee anything. The world basically wants to get out of this pandemic, and we don't know when that will happen. That's the problem.
Ambassador Srivastava, looking at purely, using this particular, challenge that was there, turning into an opportunity, do you somewhere feel, major global challenges, especially like climate change, health, technological innovation, India has been able to make great inroads, in this particular pandemic phase. So do you somewhere feel this creates a much favorable, prospect for India as the leaders meet in G20 as well as COP26?
Well, I would say that India's record speaks for itself.
Okay.
And I have given, I don't want to repeat many of the facts and figures which I have already mentioned earlier. But all I would say is this, that both in respect of climate change, where India is set to exceed its Paris Accord goals, and with respect to the COVID pandemic, which India has been able to contain, and resume vaccine exports, I think yes. The answer to your question is yes. That India will play a key role in this G20 meeting on these two very important topics. In addition, of course, to the the economic recovery which you mentioned earlier.
Also, let me get a quick word from you before I let you go. Purely from a COVID or COVID-19 world, do you somewhere feel it has helped India get, or India at the helm, somewhere play a larger role, especially in the G20 summit?
My own reaction is that everybody would have been better off if COVID had not happened.
Exactly.
And I have studied and written about the outbreak of COVID, how it all began. And I don't want to go into details and name countries, but the fact is that I feel that if adequate and speedy action had been taken, this is a pandemic which could have been controlled in the city of Wuhan. unfortunately it was not, and it spread all over the world. And once this kind of a virus goes around, then this is a one in 100-year phenomenon that you are seeing. As and nobody now knows at this point. I mean, I'm not even an expert, but nobody knows when this will end. I just spent a few months in United States, and I saw that there was a third wave of this Delta variant coming there. Now this is the most advanced country in the world, but it is witnessing a third wave of Delta variant. So I think all I can say, and I'm sure my views will be echoed by the vast majority of reasonable people, is that I pray to God every night that please end this pandemic very quickly. That's all. How it will end, when it will end, I can't say.
Mr. Ambassador Srivastava, it's not only your prayer, it's just prayer of everyone, everywhere in this world, that this pandemic needs to find a cure, this pandemic needs to end soon. Let me cut across to my correspondent there, Amrit Pal, joining us from Rome this evening. Amrit, purely looking at, India all set to assume the presidency in 2 years' time. Do you somewhere feel this conference holds significance purely for, for chalking the way ahead?
This conference holds significance, Anil, at the time it's happening.
Okay.
This is the first in-person conference that's happening in the times of pandemic. Last year it could not happen, happened in a virtual format because of the pandemic. The pandemic has not gone away. The world does realize it needs to act, but where there is no convergences that how it needs to act, countries essentially are looking at their own small interests or own interests. Well, small is a word which people can disagree with, but their own interests. Now, this conference is important because at this conference, the leaders, there is a growing demand for a collective or a united global approach toward this pandemic, because it's not something which is affecting, as Ambassador Srivastava was saying, just one country or a particular region. This is something which has disrupted supply chains across the world. Energy prices have gone up, food prices have gone up, people have to spend more on essential items. So now if borders have to be opened, if travel has to be restored, normal life has to go on, trade has to go on, economic the economic distress, one needs to come out of it. There is a need for a collective action. One will have to see how much of progress this forum makes, because the problem with this forum is, one, there are divergences, so many divergences. For example, in this particular forum, the Russian president, the Chinese president are not participating in this meeting. They've sent their foreign ministers, but the divergences still remain. The consensus remains elusive, even on issues like climate change. And even when we've seen in the past countries make commitments, they don't honor it. So that persists. One will have to see how far it goes, and that's the importance and significance of this conference, because after all, these are the 20 largest economies controlling 80% of the world's GDP. So the decisions that they take have major impact on how the world turns out.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate both of you, Ambassador Srivastava as well as our correspondent Amrit Pal Singh, for joining us, giving us those insights on our program World Today.
Thank you.
Moving on, Prime Minister will travel to Glasgow to attend the World Leaders Summit of the 26th Conference of Parties, or COP26, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change at the invitation of Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson. COP26 is being held from the 31st of October to the 12th of November this year under the presidency of the UK, partnering with Italy. The high-level segment of COP26, titled the World Leaders Summit, or the WLS, will be held on the 1st and 2nd of November. The summit will be attended by heads of state, government of more than 120 countries, and COP26 was originally slated to be held in 2020 but was deferred to 2021 in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. US climate envoy John Kerry said that the world was not yet fully aligned with what science says needs to be done to avoid the worst consequences of the climate crisis. John Kerry said this at the London School of Economics on Thursday. Kerry's speech comes ahead of the United Nations Climate Summit known as COP26, which is seen as vital to tackling the threat of rising temperatures.
The cost that no one is willing to pay is the cost of inaction. The world must work together to close this gap, but particular responsibility lies with the top 20 economies of the world, all of whom are responsible for 80% of all the emissions.
Well, despite the challenges common to developing countries in mitigating climate change, India has set and is also on track to meet and exceed its goal as per Paris Agreement. Natural Resources Defense Council, an international non-profit organization, has compiled a report that shows India is indeed walking the talk as far as climate commitments are concerned. Here's how.
India is largely on track to meet and even exceed its Paris Climate Agreement targets, according to a new report by Natural Resources Defense Council, an international non-profit organization. The NRDC, in its annual review of India's actions on climate change titled "The Road from Paris, India's Progress Towards its Climate Pledge," said that the country is likely to meet its target of reducing emissions by 33 to 35% of its GDP by 2030 from the 2005 levels and achieve 40% of its installed power capacity from non-fossil fuels by 2030, with some more work to do on its goal of creating an additional carbon sink. Salient features of the report indicate that India is indeed walking the talk and is serious about honouring its climate commitments. Though fossil fuels still account for the majority of India's power generation, the share of thermal capacity has decreased to 60.7%. Factoring in large hydro and nuclear, India's fossil fuel-free power totaled 39.3% of the country's installed capacity, nearly equal to the 2030 goal. Rapidly growing renewables, the share of installed capacity from renewable energy sources has increased to 26% in August 2021, while the share of thermal capacity is at about 60.7%. Hydrogen mission gaining steam to support its clean energy transition, India has launched a new hydrogen mission which explores how green hydrogen can be utilized by existing end users of hydrogen. Increasingly competitive solar power, tariffs for solar energy projects reached record lows of 1.99 rupees per kilowatt hour at a December 2020 auction. Advancing electric mobility under phase 2 of the faster adoption and manufacture of electric vehicle scheme, India has allocated 10,000 crore rupees to advance electric mobility as well as electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Advancing energy efficient buildings. As of July 2021, 18 states and 2 union territories have notified the Energy Conservation Building Code (ECBC). Ratifying cooling action plans in August 2021, India committed to ratifying the Kigali Amendment, the global pact to phase down super climate polluting hydrocarbons (HFCs), reducing air pollution as part of its goal to achieving a 20 to 30% air pollution reduction by 2024. India launched a national clean air program in 2019 and allocated funds to states for reducing air pollution under 2020 and 2021 budgets. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the upcoming International Climate Conference on COP26 in Glasgow, which will be held from October 31st to November 12th. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, a quick look at global COVID-19 figures on how they stand. So far, more than 24 crore 62 lakh cases of COVID-19 worldwide. Total recoveries world over, 22 crores 31 lakh. 49 lakh 95,000 fatalities being reported world over due to COVID-19. United States continues to remain the worst affected by the pandemic right from the beginning to the present day, with the Delta plus variant causing havoc. Over 4 crore 46 lakh cases of COVID-19 being reported. In terms of fatalities, over 7 lakh 63,000 deaths being reported in the United States of America. The World Health Organization (WHO) has appealed to the leaders of the 20 biggest economies, the G20 leaders, to fund a $23.4 billion plan in its fight against COVID-19 in poorer countries. Tedros Ghebreyesus said that the G20 should fully fund the latest round of the program, which aims to provide vaccines, drugs and tests to the poorest countries until September 2022, expected to include the use of an experimental oral antiviral pill made by Merck and Company for treating mild and moderate cases. The WHO's call has come ahead of the meeting of the group of 20 leaders in Italy's Rome. Britain will do away with the mandatory COVID-19 quarantine measures on arrival from red list countries. Britain's Transport Minister Grant Shapps said that the country will remove the 10-day-long mandatory quarantine on arrival from the 7 red list countries from November 1st. The 7 countries include Colombia, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Haiti, Panama, Peru and Venezuela. The minister also said 30 more countries would be added to the list of nations whose coronavirus vaccinations are recognized by Britain, taking the total to more than 135 countries. Britain has more than 89,36,000 cases of COVID-19, with the fatalities now over 1,40,000. With a recent massive surge in the coronavirus infection in Russia, shops, restaurants and schools have shut down in Moscow in a partial lockdown as Russia battles record COVID-19 deaths and infections. Only essential shops like supermarkets and pharmacies are allowed to open in the capital, while food outlets are only providing takeaways. Authorities have also given workers across Russia 9 days off from Saturday in a bid to curb infections. Russia has reported a record 1,159 deaths from COVID in the last 24 hours, and the official data also reveals 40,096 new infections in 85 regions of Russia. The last major lockdown was in May-June 2020 in Russia. The overall COVID-19 death toll due to the pandemic is officially more than 230,000 in Russia, the highest in Europe and one of the highest in the world. Well, time now to shift focus and take a look at some other news from across the world.
Social media giant Facebook Inc. unveiled a new name and logo at its headquarters in Menlo Park, California, replacing its thumbs-up-like logo with a blue infinity shape. The company announced it would rebrand as Meta, a name change that underscores its ambitions to refocus the world's largest social network on building the metaverse. The rebrand comes as the company battles criticisms from lawmakers and regulators over its market power, algorithmic decisions and the policing abuses on its platforms. CEO Mark Zuckerberg, speaking at the company's live-streamed virtual and augmented reality conference, said the new name reflected its focus on building this new virtual realm rather than its namesake social media service. The tech giant said the change would bring together its different apps and technologies under one new brand. However, it said it would not change its corporate structure. In Bangladesh, the country's High Court has ordered a judicial probe into the recent incidents of communal violence that claimed lives of 6 locals during Durga Puja last month. In its order, the court has asked the judicial magistrates of Rangpur, Kumilla, Chattogram, Feni, Chandpur and Noakhali to probe the incidents of communal violence and submit the report within 60 days. The High Court also asked the concerned authorities to explain as to why it shall not declare as illegal the inaction of local administration to ensure security of the victims. Bangladesh witnessed vandalism against temples and attacks on minority Hindu community homes and business establishments across several places following a reported desecration of the Holy Quran inside a puja mandap in Kumilla. Subsequently, police arrested one Iqbal Hussain, who confessed to have done the act of desecration inside the mandap. The cleanup began today in Australian state capitals of Melbourne and Adelaide after severe storms ripped through properties and uprooted trees. During the storm, one property in Melbourne had the roof come down into the bedroom with debris strewn over the yard. The Victorian State Emergency Service said it was responding to hundreds of calls for help as a severe weather warning remains in place for parts of Victoria. The Camber Vieja volcano in Spain's La Palma island has stepped into its 6th week of activity, having begun on 19 September. Large plumes of smoke rose up from the Veja volcano on the island of La Palma, encouraging bystanders to watch and take photos. A volcanologist with Spain's National Geographic Institute said the volcano activity was likely to increase inside La Palma's exclusion zone, but lava flows were unlikely to reach the sea. Around 7,000 people have had to evacuate their homes in La Palma. 5.0 magnitude earthquake recorded the highest since the eruption began. Lava flow now covers surface area of over 900 hectares according to Copernicus radar imaging, with more than 2,200 buildings destroyed. Over 35,000 earthquakes and tremors recorded in La Palma over the past month. Globally, climate has been taking catastrophic turns. The Democratic Republic of Congo's environment minister said on Thursday the country intends to ban all log exports and implement other measures to lessen threats to its carbon-absorbing tropical rainforest, a major bulwark against climate change. Home to a majority of the world's second-largest rainforest, Congo is under pressure to improve forest management and curb a high deforestation rate that has doubled in the last decade. The Congo Basin rainforest, 60% of which lies in Congo, sucks nearly 4% of global carbon dioxide emissions out of the atmosphere annually. The Environment Ministry's plan to lift a 2002 moratorium on new industrial logging concessions has dismayed environmental groups and scientists who have warned of catastrophic environmental, social and climatic impacts. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, taking a look at sports stories now, Inter Milan striker Lautaro Martinez has signed a new contract at the Italian Giants until 2026. Martinez, aged 24, was approaching the final 18 months of his contract, but talks for a new deal had reportedly been ongoing for the past several months. The Argentina international had earlier this year admitted he was close to joining Barcelona in 2020, but the transfer broke down due to financial reasons. Martinez, who moved to Italy from Argentine side Racing Club for a reported fee of 25 million euros in 2018, has scored 54 times in 144 games for Inter in all competition, winning the Scudetto last season. Well, Hardik Pandya is back in the nets and fans are super elated ahead of the India versus New Zealand match on Sunday. Our next report brings you the latest details on Hardik Pandya, supported with stats.
28 years old Hardik Pandya has resumed bowling in practice sessions ahead of India versus New Zealand match in the ongoing T20 Cricket World Cup. However, the cricket fraternity is off late witnessing a lot of questions that are looming over Hardik Pandya's bowling performance and his fitness. In India's T20 opening match against Team Pakistan as well, Hardik Pandya struggled to 11 of 8 balls and further sustained a shoulder injury. If you look at the stats, Pandya has played 50 T20 international matches and has taken 42 wickets with an economy rate of 8.17. In terms of the Indian Premier League, Hardik Pandya has played 92 matches and has taken 42 wickets with an economy rate of 9.06. However, in the team for his all-round abilities for the majority of his career, Pandya's bowling has taken a back seat since requiring back surgery in the year 2018. His bowling workloads were steadily increasing during India's tour of Sri Lanka in July, where he bowled 16 overs across 3 ODIs and a T20 international. However, he did not bowl at all for the Mumbai Indians in the second half of the IPL season in Dubai. With Pandya's return to the practice session ahead of the India versus New Zealand T20 Cricket World Cup group stage match, the bowling in the nets is now seen as a step in the right direction for both him and the Indian team, as the India all-rounder looks a step closer to returning to bowling duties at the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, let's now take a look at some stories beyond the headlines.
The latest exhibit by the Dolores Olmedo Museum, set up at New shows the massive edition of Day of the Dead is anything but lifeless, showcasing Mexican history from pre-Hispanic times all the way through to the fight for independence. The exhibit mixes papier-mâché and painting techniques to embody famous characters throughout 27 scenes. Members of the museum's board and Mexico City officials inaugurated a new venue of the museum where the exhibit is being held at the recently developed Aztlán Urban Park, located inside the capital's sprawling post the Chapultepec Park. The exhibit opened its door today and will go on till 28th of February next year. A Day of the Dead altar dedicated to the LGBT victims of hate crimes went up in Mexico City's Memory and Tolerance Museum. The altar comes amid stark statistics in Mexico on violence against the LGBT community. The altar is called Phobias That Kill, the Colors That Hurt, and features colorful skulls painted in Mexican colors as well as an elaborate arrangement of bright marigolds, the traditional flower of the Day of the Dead. A Dutch zoo has welcomed a new member. The zoo displayed its second newborn rhinoceros of the year and the 14th in recent decades. The zoo authorities said that the baby and the mother are doing well. The male square-lipped rhinoceros named as Stark was born this week. The Burger Zoo has been one of the most successful in Europe at breeding rhinos, an endangered species, producing 14 in all since the year 1977. Germany's Cologne Zoo presented a tiny newborn poodoo, the latest addition to the deer family in their zoo. Poodoos are about half the size of deer native to Germany. The forest animals are mostly active at night and like to eat leaves, fruits, flowers and young tree shoots. Newborn Jules was born 6 weeks ago into a family of southern poodoos at the zoo. The zookeepers have yet to determine the new arrival's gender and will leave the young family in peace for a while. Cuba's National Zoo has seen a baby boom of several exotic and endangered species. Zookeepers say they've seen a bumper growth in number of baby animals not seen in recent years. The newborns include leopards, Bengal tigers, zebras, giraffes, antelopes and oxen. With new staff going through their paces and arcade machines primed and ready, a circus-themed fun bar in Sydney is raring to reopen for the first time in 4 months on 1st of November. Featuring luminescent bumper cars, 10-pin bowling and classic arcade games, Archie Brothers Circuit Electric has been shut since Sydney lockdown on 26th of June. Only fully vaccinated people would be accepted into the venue and COVID-19 protocols would be in place so that all equipment and games would be safe to use. All guests at a temporary capacity of 350 would have to follow social distancing measures as well. Thousands of worshippers dressed up in purple robes came to Peru's capital to pay homage to the Lord of Miracles. The popular procession, a tradition dating from 1687, when a mural depicting the same image of Jesus Christ escaped unscathed in a powerful earthquake, was cancelled for the second year straight because of COVID-19. This year, the faithful lined up to visit the mural inside of Las Nazarinas Church. Faithful and devotees gathered outside the Las Nazarinas Church to praise the Lord of Miracles and ask Him for kindness. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, before we end this bulletin, it's time now for our special history segment, History Scan. Let's take a look into what happened on this very day in the past.
It was on this day in 1923 Turkey became a republic under its first president Kemal Atatürk. In 2005, on this day, 66 people were killed when 3 bomb blasts tore through markets in New Delhi. On this day in 2007, Russia's chessboard murderer Alexander Pichushkin sentenced to life in prison for killing 48 people. On this day in 2015, China announces end of one-child policy. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of World Today. You have a safe and wonderful evening ahead. Bye-bye. Take care. Signing off with my entire team. Bye-bye.